delighted to welcome our next speaker on board. Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming Kahlil Maramba as our next speaker. He is a technology coach at Windhoek International School in Namibia. He has worked at a few international schools around the world. He established a Bring Your Own Device program, remote learning, blended learning, and digital portfolios, among the other initiatives. He chairs a committee that hosts an annual conference that celebrates teachers who integrate technology into everyday learning in Namibia. His passion is seeing technology promote reading and writing skills among the learners. He is a teacher and a learner. He believes that we all learn something from each other. Let's go ahead and welcome him on board.
Hello everyone, my name is Maramba. I am a technology coach at Windhoek International School in Namibia. I work with teachers and students using technology in their classes. I also work with the school administration with regards to planning, whether it's anything to do with the curriculum and how the technology fits into curriculum. I also work with parents, so I talk to parents about how their children use technology at school. And sometimes parents also need advice with regards to finding a balance between using media and devices at home and going on with their everyday life. My topic today is classroom management strategies for a one-to-one device class. So we have different situations at our schools. This is what we're used to. When most of us grew up, we used to pen and paper, books and things like that at our tables, and maybe other manipulatives and things like that. Recently, we've added on devices in our classes. Now, I understand that our environments are different. In some schools, we have a one-to-one device where each child has a device that they can use in the classroom. In some schools, there's probably a cart with devices that teachers can sign out and use with their students in their classes. In some schools, maybe there's a computer lab situation where students go to use a computer with their teachers. In all of these situations, I think as teachers, sometimes we get afraid of using the technology and bringing the technology into our environments because it brings a lot of other issues related to behavior and classroom management. So my topic hopefully will get you comfortable using devices in the classroom and will help you manage transitions and be able to make sure that the devices are being used for teaching and learning other than just playing. I think first off, I'll go straight into the strategies. First off, when I started teaching, I was told about establishing classroom agreements. Now, most of the strategies I'm going to talk about today are probably things that you already know, probably things that you've heard about, things that you're already doing. But when it comes to devices, I think we get a little bit scared, and my hope is just to show you that the same classroom management strategies apply when we're using the devices. The devices are nothing special. So I was taught to establish classroom agreements with the students. Let's agree on how we talk to each other. Let's agree on how we treat each other. Let's agree on how we handle everything in our class. And one of the things we handle in a class is devices. Let's agree on when we should use the devices and how we should use them, what we should be doing on the devices. I find that when the things are coming from the students, the ideas are coming from the students, it is much better to keep to those agreements than if we give them a sort of rules, do this, do that, don't do this. So that's one strategy. To go along with that, one thing I really find is we want to treat the devices as a tool in the classroom. A tool just like a pencil. So we pick up a pencil and we use it as and when we need to use it. And would like to see the devices as just as the same. We pick up the device and we use it as and when we need to. Probably we need to look up something in a dictionary. We probably need to do some research, or now that we know what we've learned, we'd like to show what we've learned. So we only pick it up only when we need it. In most classes that I go to, the devices are in a certain corner at the table, and there are other things around the table so that the students can easily pick them up and use them. In some classes, they have a desk or a shelf somewhere where the devices are kept. So it depends on your classroom environment. Sometimes teachers feel that the devices are a distraction, and so putting them in a shelf somewhere away from the students might help. So devices are only used as and when needed, but they are accessible. We are fortunate enough to have the devices in our classes. Another strategy I'd like to talk about is rehearsing transitions. So what happens when we need to put the devices away and start using other manipulatives or prepare for a drama performance, music performance, anything else we're doing in class. Maybe we're transitioning to a maths lesson or something like that. There are certain procedures that we follow. In some classes, the teacher would have the students pack everything away, clear their desks, make sure there's nothing in front to distract the students, which might mean the device might be put in its corner, the device might be put in the student's bag right next to their chair, or in the other classes I mentioned before, the device might be put in a shelf somewhere in the corner in the classroom. So I think it is important to practice those transitions so that whenever you as a teacher would like to transition to something else, the students know exactly what to do, exactly how to clear their tables and put everything away. So we use nonverbal communication. That's one other strategy that I find very useful. I remember when we grew up, and probably some of you might remember as well, when we grew up and we did something, our parents used to give us a certain look. That look would just tell us we're probably doing something that is not appropriate and we need to behave. And I think we can use those kinds of clues as well. We can communicate with the students without shouting, without causing a lot of havoc in the class. So one of those nonverbal communication strategies is walking around. It is very important that we don't sit at our chairs at the teacher's desk the whole time, that we get up and we move around the classroom, we walk around so that the students can sense our presence. A lot of times I find when students are doing things they shouldn't be doing, the moment you walk close to them, they can't continue. So they need to stop whatever they're doing and focus on their work. I think that is very important. One thing is we always need to know what is on our students' screens. So I wouldn't advise when using devices that the screens are right there and you can't see what the students are doing. Classrooms are all different. Some classes have space, so devices can be put in such a way that the screens are facing the teacher. But in some classes, it's just not possible. So the idea of walking around, you have an idea of what the students are doing when you're walking around. And like I said, it cannot be 100%. So you might get times where students are fooling around, but when you're walking around, you let the students know that you are present, and then they cannot continue fooling around. Classroom design, as I mentioned before, is you might have a particular student in your class that you know for sure this student struggles with attention. You might want to arrange a classroom in such a way that that student sits maybe a little bit closer to you, like I mentioned before, in a way that you can be able to see that child's screen the whole time they're using a device. That helps because I think as adults, we also get distracted, and there are things that we do to make sure that we're focused. So just rearranging the classroom. When a child is sitting right next close to you. They might not be distracted. They might not get carried away and start doing inappropriate things. But that's not to say that the child can stay there the whole time. We'd like to continuously enable the children to sit in different places. But maybe when you know that they get distracted when they use their device, after a certain period of time, the child will know that the agreement with my teacher is when I use my device, I sit close to, or I sit in this position. And it's very important that they know why they're being moved to a certain position. So an example I'll give in my class, I'll talk to a student and I'll ask them what's going on. I'm distracted, I'm playing music, I'm doing other things and things like that. Then I'll try and discuss with the students, what can we do about this? And they can bring it up, or I can bring it up to say, let's move you to sit in a place where you will not be distracted. As long as they know, then each time they use their device, we need to get to a point where they know that when I need to use my device, nobody needs to tell me I need to move to a place where I'm not getting distracted. And hopefully that is a life skill. It shouldn't just be in your classroom. It's something that they should be able to do even when they're at home, to know that I need to focus now. Can I put myself in a position, sit somewhere where I'm not getting distracted? Then we've got verbal communication strategies, okay? We're trying to get away from the idea of shouting at the top of our voice. And so we could pull the students aside. One thing that has really worked for me very well is when I've had a student that's causing trouble, that's getting distracted or distracting other students, I would pull them aside. We can probably step outside of the classroom for a quick chat. What's happening? Is it appropriate? Please stop. What can we do to make this better? I could pull them aside. Sometimes I can remind them about their behavior during the lesson, but as the class finishes, as the students are leaving the room, I can just say, so-and-so, can you please stay for one moment? And then we talk about what happened in the class, and then try and find strategies to make sure that doesn't happen again. So pulling them aside is quite effective, different from shouting at them in front of everybody. We might end up in a situation where the child is embarrassed, and then they can end up responding negatively to that. The other thing as well is there are some students who I've heard students who look for attention. So when we shout at them in front of the classroom, we're giving them that attention. We're causing an environment that is not very conducive. Pulling them aside and talking to them individually helps. I find that it establishes a relationship between the teacher and the student, so that whenever the student is distracted or doing something inappropriate, I can then give them a look, and then they know, because of our previous discussion, they know that they're doing something inappropriate, and then they can change. Offering praise, okay? This is together with pulling the students aside. You've had a discussion with the students, you've talked about behavior, you've talked about strategies to make sure that the child remains focused or stops whatever inappropriate behavior they're doing. When they do very well, it is good to offer praise and say, hey, you did a good job. I think today's class went well. You need to keep this up. I think this motivates the children to do better and to do more. Because they notice that, let's think back to that student that I've heard people say, oh, they need attention. I will give that student attention. When they've done well, I'll tell them, today went very well. That's the attention I'm giving them. And hopefully, again, it improves the student to teacher relationship, because I think relationships are key and they can solve most of the issues and problems that we have. Next would be writing positive letters. So a student has done, in some cases when there's behavior issues, we talk to the students. If a behavior is recurring, we contact and talk to the parents. This and this is happening. I would like you to talk to your child, would like to let you know that this has been happening. These are the strategies we are using in class, but would also like you to talk to your child And I find that when the child has done well, in addition to talking to the student and giving them praise, writing an email home to say, in the past few weeks, I've noticed so-and-so is doing very well, behavior has changed and is more focused. I think that is very powerful, because when the parent reads that, they feel very good. They're going to talk to their child. Your teacher has said this and this and that. And I think that conversation at home also helps. It motivates the child to do even better. Idle time choice boards. There are times when students have finished their work. I also have students that finish their work quickly, or they think they're finished, but they've probably skipped through a lot of things and things like that. But if they're really done and there's idle time, I try and discourage the idea of, you can go on your device and you can listen to music, or you can do this quietly on your device. I try and encourage choice boards that say, if you're done with your work, you can read this book, you can try this challenge out. If they have to use the technology, often students always need to practice things like typing skills. So I'd say give that as one of the choices, to say, when you're done with your work, you don't need to talk to anyone, you don't need to say anything, you don't need to shout, I'm done. Look at this choice board. It's always visible in the class. These are the 3 things that you can do. One of the things might be you can take your device and practice your typing skills. These are productive things that students can do during idle time, and it reduces the risk of getting distracted, getting carried away, and misbehaving. I would avoid blanket punishment. When 2 or 3 students have done something wrong in the class, I'll pull them aside, I'll talk to them. One student has done something, I talk to them individually, because I find that punishing the whole class because a few people have done something wrong discourages those that have actually been doing well. It could also, thinking about those attention seekers, they enjoy that. We're giving them attention. And in some cases, I've seen some students actually misbehave or do something just because they want the whole class to get punished. So that's why I would avoid that. I'll just talk to those individual students. Modeling behavior. I think as adults, it is very important that we model the behavior that we want to see the students showing. So I've often heard the case of, they spend too much time on social media. Let's look at ourselves as adults. Do we spend when the students look at us, do they see us on our devices the whole time? I often say there's a difference between, I use my device a lot for work. There's a difference between checking an email quickly, responding to it, and putting a device away. And there's a difference between looking at my device for like 10 minutes and then, something is amazing and I'm smiling and things like that. Let us know if they're spending too much time on their devices. Let us show them as adults that we also have a balanced life, that we also don't spend too much time on our devices, because they look at us and they think, well, if you can do it, why can't I? I think these are all the strategies I had to talk about today. I would like to be entering into the question and answer session now, and I'd like to find out from you, what are strategies that work for you, or of all the strategies I've spoken about today, which one stands out for you? Okay, I'm going to read out, I have one question right now in the chat. I'm going to read it out and then try my best to respond. Somebody says, very important topic with this issue of gadgets. How do you put all the students on the same platform when some come from families that cannot afford? Okay, that's a good question that I think a lot of schools struggle with. My school is not one of the wealthy schools. There are schools that out of school fees, they charge a certain amount, I think it's a capital levy, and then that ensures that everybody gets a device. That doesn't happen at our school. The students from grade 4 upwards are encouraged to bring their own device from home. So you will get an instance where some parents will say, well, I cannot afford, or I can only afford this cheap device. And then you end up with the device is not suitable for learning. As best as we can, we try and pick platforms or tools for learning that work across platforms. So if somebody's using Apple, if somebody's using Windows or Chromebooks, we try and choose platforms that are tools that can work with all platforms, easy to use, so that whoever brings whatever device they bring, they'll be able to use that tool. One other thing we do is when we can, we might have 2 or 3 devices that we keep in the school, so that if somebody's device is broken and it's being repaired, they could probably borrow that for a few days, only for a few days to use, so that they can continue learning. And sometimes you might contact, depending on the suppliers, there might be payment plans to say, okay, this child really needs a device. Can you allow them to pay for the device over a period of time? I'll go to another question about devices. Sometimes learners might have their own devices. How can we manage that? Okay. It's a tough one. I think what works best is when everybody's using the same device. Then everybody knows issues that happen around that device and everybody can kind of help each other. But that doesn't happen every time. Like I mentioned before, it depends on circumstances. So maybe I'd advise 2 or 3 devices that are recommended that people can, choose to use. And then if you really can't, again, it goes back to the point I said about choosing tools. Like we use the G Suite platform, which can be used on any device, whether it's Android, iOS, or Windows. So choosing tools that are cross-platform that will allow, if anybody comes, they can sign in with ease and use a particular tool. I think we have time for one more question. There's a third question in the chat here. Not a question, but a comment. I do like this topic. It is very important to know whether the learning is taking place. Thank you for sharing the strategies. This is from, I think it's Bertha. Thank you. I agree. I think it's quite an important one. Traditional education system had a methodology of measuring performance which helped teachers and schools with classroom management. Now that we have moved to digital platform, what are the challenges classroom management will have in absence of physical presence? Can classroom management strategies not just be related to performance measurement, but as a tool to change, I can't read this word, and understand what elements leads to change, to track and understand what elements leads to change in behavior. So I think one of the best things to do here is to understand that when you're using technology, to understand why we're using the technology. So one of the examples I could say is you want the children to be able to show their understanding in different ways. So maybe you ask them to create a short video or animation, give them a rubric. In your animation should explain this and this and this and that. So if we have a clear set criteria that the children use to show their learning when they use the devices, then that way that helps us ensure that the devices are being used for teaching and learning. If there's no criteria, if children are just researching open-ended, then we might not be able to track and make sure that they're being used properly. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate the questions. I hope to hear your more. I hope you will apply these strategies in your classroom.
Thank you so much, Dinai. It was a pleasure having you on board. I'm sure everybody enjoyed. We have more questions pouring in, and what we are going to do is we're going to go ahead and email it to you so that you can go ahead and respond to our delegates.
Thank you.
Yes. Hope you have a great day ahead. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you once again. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye. Have a good day.